Hey guys, this is going to be a new series called Let's Run a Tournament. It should be about 3 or 4 videos talking about the ins and outs before, during, and after a tournament, little things you might not know until you've been running tournaments for a little bit, and everything in between. I've been running tournaments now for 2 years, so I think I have a pretty decent grasp of how things go, but regardless, this series should show you what you need to get started and keep consistently running a good tournament. We're going to start off with securing a venue. This is one of the harder parts depending on what your location is. I say check around for local game and card shops because those are usually the best venues that are automatically in. Like, yes, I'd love to have tournaments run here. I'd love to have more people who will buy my product in my shop. Also make sure that whatever they're asking, if they ask for a price for you to rent out the space, can be covered by a $2 to $5 venue fee. And you want to be careful because you don't want to be charging $5 for entry and $5 for venue for a weekly, whereas you'd like to keep that number a little bit lower, anywhere between the total of venue and entry should be between 4 and 8 maybe. And if all else fails, hit up a game store like GameStop. They're almost 100% always down because, again, it's more business for them. Make sure though, wherever you get it, whether it be the GameStop, the card shop, or somewhere else that you find that's either reasonably priced or you have connections, that you have chairs for people to sit in, tables for setups to go on, and extension cables / enough outlets, because if a venue doesn't have one of those three, it's really bad. If you have really bad chairs, it's not fun for anyone to be sitting in them, but that's one that's probably the least important on at least the quality. You do need chairs though. Tables, you don't want to be having half of your setups be on the floor. And the power outlet thing is a big deal because if you have enough setups, you want them to be spread out and have enough places to power them. Make sure the stuff that you can't be in control of will be handled, specifically temperature of the place, or making sure that the venue will be unlocked at the right time, which will usually just come to communicating with the owner of the venue. Make sure you've tested the power outlet situation to make sure there's not going to be a blowout. That shouldn't really happen, but just know how many setups you should be putting into the outlets. Using having an outlet that's got 2 ports and then separating those to 2 extension cords with 2 setups on each of those is generally fine. And like I mentioned earlier, pricing appropriate is kind of the last thing for venue. And depending on if you're doing weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, gives you more leeway on price. Also, be honest with what the price is, because if you're charging $4 for venue when you could be charging $3, and people don't realize that you're taking an extra dollar home, that's okay, but people need to know. Because people, if they find out about that and they weren't oh, I was totally down for this, because Smash players are let me pay the least amount as possible, you can get some backlash. So just talk to your scene, figure out what's right. Everyone really will be understanding when it's all out in the open. Last thing to go over for an event before you're deep into it is advertising. You want to make sure that you're using the Facebook groups. Almost every scene kind of communicates mainly through this. And if you're part of a scene, you most likely are already a part of it. That's the best way to be able to advertise your tournaments and find the people who want to find your stuff, so you can have the maximum attendance. Also, hit up close regions or cities for carpools. If you know someone's coming with an empty car, you could be oh, either can you check and see if anyone wants to go, or I know that these people said they wanted to go but they don't have a ride. You can use Discord if your region has it. That's another great place to be able to find people to go to your tournament, and a way to advertise as well. And make sure it doesn't conflict with other events, because there will get to the point where, depending where you are, there's not enough weekends or days for all the events that people want to run. But as long as you communicate with everyone else who's in charge of the other events, you should be fine. You just don't want to be burning bridges too early. Also, talk to the TOs, because they'll know who usually does carpools or who would be interested in going. They're usually the most familiar with their scene, so they're a wealth of knowledge, and you can just ask them, and I'm sure almost anyone will be, oh yeah, here's these people usually try to carpool. Oh, these people probably would want to go to your event. Next up, and probably the last topic for this video, is going to be building and running a bracket. Make sure the established site you're using, whether I suggest it being Challenge or Smash GG, you get familiar with them. Challenge you can make practice brackets and do whatever you want with, and Smash GG has really good support communication. So if you need anything from them or don't understand, you can like immediately talk to them once you're registered as a TO on their site. Also, make sure to start your brackets on time. It's very easy for someone to go to 2 of your events and they start 30 minutes late and be like, I really don't want to come out anymore, especially if people are making the drive and they're not 15 or 20 minutes from home, but they're an hour. Being on time is so important. If people are going to be late, you can say, hey, I'll put you in bracket. I'll call your matches like last in that round. As long as you can be here by the time that this round's going to be called, you'll be fine. And that's totally okay. Lots of people do that. But just make sure that you don't try to hold out too long for them, past the point that you should be, that your tournament starts to suffer and everyone else there is getting pushed back later because of 1 or 2 other people. Make sure to keep players on setups. This is one that seems fairly obvious, but it's something that I see a lot of TOs mess up, and it's that whenever there's an open setup, the next match should be called. Like 30 seconds, or when a match comes to report to you, I usually ask the people who come to report me, what setup number did you come from, so I immediately know who to call from next, and I try to constantly check if I have a lot of setups. For like my monthly, I usually have anywhere between 10 to 16 setups, and I'll usually do a walk around when I don't have any matches to report to see if I missed any. And this kind of goes along with keeping players on setups, and it's staying focused while running your bracket, because if you are lollygagging, checking Reddit or your phone at times where matches need to be reported or you need to be calling things, or you take a smoke break or something, it's only going to hurt your tournament. And I'm not saying like 100% of the time you are just delved in, you're staring at the bracket. If you're not staring at the bracket, you're calling matches. But if people are distracting you, you need to tell them, hey, I'm running a tournament, like we can chat later, like move them from the TO desk if that's where you're at or wherever you are, and stay focused, because you'll lose time here or there and it can add up to being 30 minutes at the end of the tournament, if not more, if you're running a big tournament. So stay focused. That's such a big point. I can't emphasize how important it is to constantly have people getting called on setups. And if you want to enter your tournament, that's fine. But make sure you have someone who is also as dedicated to making the tournament run well as you are. Because if they're lollygagging over there, like if you have someone, I don't know, who's doing homework while they're doing it, and then stuff starts going slow, you're going to run into problems, and it comes back to you at the end of the day because you're the TO, it's your event. Make sure to switch between losers and winners. Generally, you want to do a round in winners, round in losers, round in winners, round in losers. The only exception being you usually have to do winners round 1 and 2 before you start losers, because both of those will go into losers round 1, or like maybe losers round 2 if you have the weird losers round 1, which is like 3 matches. But then at that point, you kind of want to keep the bracket even. So like when you move ahead, or I guess this way, with winners down here and losers, you want to, after here, instead of going on to the next section of matches, you actually want to pull this up. And it should generally be winners plays. The people who lose out of winners are now waiting on their next losers bracket. So once you're done with that winner set, you fill out losers, and that means now everyone in winners has their next set ready to go, and now everyone in losers has a set. No one should be open without a match. This is a big one, running your bracket. Hide your seating. There's a little option at the bottom of Challenge in advanced settings, and I believe you can do it on Smash UG2. I've only run one tournament on there, and I really enjoyed it. But regardless, people are going to complain about their seating. Some people have a right to, like if you drastically seed 1 through 4 wrong, then that's a problem. And don't get me wrong, the good players are going to know what their seeding is. It's very easy to tell top like 16 seeding if you're familiar with how brackets work, being like 1 fight 16, 2 15, and then how they all end up matching up 1 8, 2 7, blah 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 blah. But it makes it so the person who in your 32 person bracket that was seeded 20th doesn't go, I should have been seated above 19 and 18 and 17, so I should have been 17, when in reality it doesn't matter that much at that point, solely because the people from 17th to 24th are all getting the same placing if seating follows correctly throughout the bracket. So it's kind of just for the people whose seating, it matters but not as much from complaining, because it doesn't matter that much at that point. I definitely think you should have a top player or someone else notable in the scene review your seating if it's not 100% set in stone, like this is our PR, it is consistent, it doesn't change. Asking for help on that is totally okay. Make sure to seed properly though, and again, like I said, if you don't know, ask. And also there is a situation where you can change seating, even though if someone looked at it, they'd find it a little strange if you're changing region conflict or if you're changing constant matches that always happen. So I run a weekly and a monthly. At my monthly, there are times where I will switch like 7th and 8th seed because 8th seed always fights 1st seed and the 7th seed always fights the 2nd seed, or 8 and 9 always play, or 8 and 9 are from the same region. It's okay to make those switches because it's not a drastic impact to anyone in the bracket. Yes, now 2nd seed has a little bit easier of a match than the 1st seed, but I'd say almost all of the time at that level, that skill level change doesn't matter at all because those first 2 seeds are still going to win. But also, it's really important if 8 and 9 are in the same carpool from another city that they don't play each other. And moving someone back and having a different match, they will understand so that they don't have to fight their friends. That's probably the last thing you have to look at when building your bracket. Once you have everything seeded, and you've checked your seeding, someone else has checked your seeding, it's time to look at your final bracket and see if there are region conflicts. Obviously, I'm not going to change seeding for 2 and 3, or 3 and 4, since 2 and 3 always fight in winter semis. That's not okay because at that point, we have too much of a change on skill level. Because then it's really unfair because now 1 is fighting a harder match and 2 is fighting an easier match. Where the skill level matters, you can't really make those changes anymore. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the changes at 9 and 10 or 7 and 8 won't matter because they will for those players. But if that's not highly contested, the switch is mostly fine. And really when you're changing seeding for region is you're changing first rounds for lower level players who are in a carpool of 4 or 5 so that they don't meet within a round or 2. I usually try to check if you have a filled out round 1, I check rounds 1 and 2 for region conflict. If you have the round 1 that's like 3 matches, then I check round 1, 2, and 3 in winners. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for our first video. It was kind of long. We're going to talk about being assertive and not frightening during tournaments and fixing your mistakes in the next video, and then miscellaneous stuff after that. Let me know what you guys think about this series. Like, subscribe, yada yada, and I'll see you on the next one.